Perfect. So just for the record, this is an evening session on Wednesday, the September 15th. And I was just speaking earlier on with the student that there is a recording about this study guide for the exam where I go step by step all of those empty gaps on that guide. And that really is useful because that's where every single question in the exam is pulled from. And just as a side note, I know that you already know this, but some of my students have planned to show up tomorrow to the class with the intention of taking the exam in the class. Because I said that it takes about an hour to take the exam, and I promised that I will take the exam with them if they want. So if you feel that that's useful for you, we will go through the exam tomorrow and do it as a group if you show up. But there's absolutely no expectation or requirement as long as I get one attendance for this week from every student. I'm good, and you have that. But it doesn't mean that you have to show up. It's up to you. In terms of your question, I think that we're pretty good about the exam. You asked about the lab practical. So lab practical, and I'm just pulling up actually a site at the same time, so bear with me. Lab practical really covers the content of those practice anatomy activities that you've been completing. And since we're in such an early start of the semester, we've only done that for the endocrine system and for the blood chapter. So there's not a heck of a lot, if I'm totally honest, in terms of the volume of the material that's for the particular practical. And I'm just trying to pull that up on the screen. Let me share it with you. I think I finally reached the point where I have way too many screens, so just bear with me. I'll just share this screen like this. So the lab practical contains 25 questions. It's basically 25 pictures where I ask you, what is it that I'm showing in that picture? Or there might be an arrow and I'm asking you to explain what it is. It's not, unfortunately, a multiple choice questions. It is literally a box where you type in the answer. But the benefit of that is that I'm super chill if you do misspellings or any errors on that. I'm all about, like, if you try and it sounds even vaguely familiar, you will get some of the points. If you want full of the points, then there can be few spelling errors even still, but it has to make sense that all you need to do is prove me that you know what it is. And as long as I can say that, oh, I can tell that this student knows it, they'll get the full point. So since we've covered so little material, and I really think that endocrine system and blood have so little things that I could possibly ask from you, so there's only 25 questions in that. You have 30 minutes to take those 25 questions, and it literally is, as soon as you see it, you know what it is. There's no like long answers. They're really single words mainly. So you have more than a minute per each question, so that's ample time. You'll have time at the end of the test to go and have a glass of water and come back, and you'll still have time. We are not completing those proctored. So you can use your notes, you can use your textbook, you can use, if you take screenshots while you're studying for the practical, anything you can think of. Some of my students even take literally their phone and take pictures of the screen when they're studying for the practical. And if that rocks your boat, go for it. What's important for me is that you feel that there's a good chance for succeeding. It is worth of learning those, but I don't want you to learn those to the point that you're stressing yourself out. So you know that, oh, I think I know what this is, or, oh, I think I know what this is, and I know where to find the answer in a minute. So then you're good. What you do, you type in the answer for each of those 25 fill in the gap questions, and that's it. At the end of that, the computer software will automatically give you a grade for it. But that grade is not going to be your final grade. The computer software that we use is really, I wouldn't want to say bad things about it, but it's not very accommodating to spelling errors or alternative answers to a question, because the truth is that some of those, there's multiple correct answers, those questions. So you can just pick whichever of those answers you want to give. If you give me multiple answers, which all would be correct, you can actually get more than 100 points for each question. So you can end up walking away with more points than there were even available in the quiz. So I always tell my students that if you get stuck, whether it is this practical or if it is the exam, and you don't know what the answer is, tell me something about what you see, or tell me something about that relates to that, or if nothing else, tell me about the cats, and I'll be like, okay, I'll give you some points, because I love my pet cat. But anyway, so really it is only the final score once I've had a chance to go back and regrade everything. So don't freak out. That's what happens during the first exam with most of my classes. And I'm not doubting you, but just because there's always that student who doesn't know. And then they're like, oh, I did so bad. And I'm like, no, just wait that I grade it. And usually the grade goes up on average about 1 letter grade. So that gives you an idea that I'm very generous when I grade. In terms of what kind of questions can come up in the practical, the best way to practice to that is by taking that practice practical 1 that I have also on that learning module. The practice practical 1 doesn't have anything new that you wouldn't have already seen in those practice anatomy activities. But basically what it is, it contains a pool of questions, and from that pool, a certain number of questions get pulled out. Because on this practical exam, I only have 25 questions, I think the practice 1 shows every single one of those. But later on, when you get to the practical 2, 3, 4, we will have more material. So I always encourage my students that later on, practice through that multiple times so you get a chance to see every one of those questions, because it only pulls so many of those at one time. So really, if you're wanting to think what would be my best bet to practice, have a look through the anatomy practice anatomies that you've done, and have a look through that practice practical. What else could I share about it? I am happy to go through the practical with you here and now if you have time, but you don't have to go through it if you feel like I've got this. I totally get it. You've got things to do. I'm not expecting that you have to keep me company. I'll find something to do. Actually, I was writing some notes for a previous class that I just finished an hour ago. So it's up to you. If you feel that that would be something that would make you feel better going into the practical, I'm totally happy to do it. I really think that it's going to take us less than 20 minutes because it literally is looking at the things. If you feel that you're good, that's all I can think of to answer, but feel free to ask any questions as well.
Okay. So with the practice, with the practice anatomy, I know you had the slides for all of those. Is it going to be like those slides that you had for
those exact ones? Yeah, it is the exact same pictures. Like, I keep my life very simple. There's nothing new that you wouldn't have seen before. Just to give you an idea, you're able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes. Just to give you an idea, let's have a look at the couple of first questions so you kind of have an idea. First, I ask you that don't cheat, and you get a point if you don't cheat. But later on, like, let's say the second question here, I'm showing a picture that you've seen before, and on that picture, I have highlighted or indicated this portion there, and I'm asking you, what could it be? And then you go and type it in there. Let me pull this up in a different way. Just give me a second. I'm going to jump back. Oh, I literally have too many screens, so bear with me. Here, and I'm gonna go question. That's what I was after. So here, for example, what we can see is that I have the picture, and I would accept if you told me that in this question I'm asking what two cells make up the portion that you see in this picture. And if you answer that, okay, it's going to be alpha and beta cells, I would accept that. Or if you answer A and B cells or anything like that, I'd be like, okay, this person clearly knows what they're talking about. Let's have a look at the next one. The next one here that I have is identifying the organ of the endocrine system. And of course, that's going to be our kidney here. And on top of the kidney, we have the adrenal gland. And if you write adrenal, I will accept it. If you write adrenal gland, I will accept it. If you write adrenal G, I will accept it. But the computer automatically will give you a different score. I have to go and like physically just look for it. But it is really that simple. I think some students have in the past answered to me also suprarenal gland, which would be great. That would work as well. Well, if you end up answering to me both adrenal gland and suprarenal gland, you get twice the points. Not because you need to know both of them. One of them is more than enough. But if you're really aiming for that 150%, great, you can do that. But there's no expectations. And remember, you have a minute per question. So it really is, these are things that you either know or you don't know. And if you don't know, a minute is a long time to find the answer. So I wouldn't panic about that. The next is a histology picture. So here, again, I'm asking you to identify, okay, there's a histological picture. What organ could that be? And we've seen this picture before when we talked about parathyroid. So you can just write parathyroid, you can write parathyroid gland or whatever. If you write thyroid gland, that's not the correct answer, but I might be like, oh, these are close, so I'll give you some points for it. So that's literally, there is nothing new that I wouldn't ask. The next one is a very good example again. So here I have identified this gland, what could it be? And again, it's gonna be parathyroid gland. So it can be either histology, or it can be just these anatomical pictures that I have. Both would be possible kinds of questions that come up, but all of these, I think, have been on your practice anatomy slides. My colleague has recorded them for you, and it really is that she just points at things and tells what it is. It's not terribly exciting, but it's hard to make it extremely exciting. Here, for example, we have the adrenal gland on top of the kidney, and I've highlighted the arrow points to the middle part of it. So if you answer adrenal gland, I will probably give you points. If you answer that it's the medulla of the adrenal gland, you definitely get the points. But like, for example, this picture, I think it's really stupid that we have a box there that's clearly showing the cortex, yet I'm pointing to the medulla. So if I'm going to be totally honest, and I have my way of grading, other professors have their own way, if I can think of, oh, she probably or he probably meant that, I will accept the answer. If the picture is bad, you get the points. So there's no curveballs. I'm very generous. Here, again, what we're seeing our pancreas, and I'm asking the portion of the gland indicated by the black arrow. If you tell me that it's the head of the pancreas that we see here, that's full marks. But even if you tell me that it's pancreas, you will get some points. If you just write head, you will still get the points for it. I'm really, really relaxed on that. I don't know if you have time. Let's just go through them all since we started. Okay. That way you know there's no curveballs. And if worse comes to worse, if we can do this in 20 minutes, you can always watch the video. That's always that. I'm asking here, identify the organ indicated by the black arrow. And what we're seeing here is the lower pelvic cavity of a female. So we're seeing there, I'm just trying to get this to scroll. We see the ovary. So we see the ovarian tubes, we see the our uterus, and we've listed the other part. So ovary is there. That's what I'm looking. It's that simple. It really is 5 letters. You've got a minute to type in 5 letters. That's ample time. There's really nothing horribly shocking or surprising in these ones. Here again, I'm showing a histological slide and asking what gland could this be? Well, this is a thyroid gland. It requires a little bit of remembering that you've seen this picture before, but to be honest, if you are totally lost and you tell me what you see, I see cells, I think it's an endocrine gland, I'm already going to be like, oh, this student deserves something. But more accurate you can be, more points I can. I think that either thyroid gland, both would work. Thyroid G, I would still give points. So it really is that don't let that throw you off, that initially the score will not be as high as your final score will be. Here I'm asking the region of an organ indicated by the black arrow. So this is going to be our zona fasciculata or zona fasciculata of the adrenal cortex. But if you end up just writing adrenal gland, you will still get points. Or if you end up writing adrenal cortex or cortex of adrenal gland, I will still get points. Like there is just different levels of detail that you can provide. But I literally, if it's close enough, I will give points. And if you give me more than I'm asking, I will give you double the points or even more. Here one, I'm asking the identify the organ indicated by black arrow. So we see here's our scrotum, and within there we have the testes of the male reproductive system. Next question. Identify the organ from this histological slide. And this looks very much to me like a pituitary gland, posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. You can write it in any way you wish, and you will get the points. A neurophysis could work as well. I hadn't thought about that. But like, I really accept any way of phrasing things. Don't worry, don't stress about how do I have to write it so I get the points. When I go back, any way you've written it, as long as it makes sense, you get the points. And if it makes more than sense, then you get more than just a simple amount of points. Here I have identified the gland that is indicated by the yellow highlight. Well, this would of course be our hypothalamus, and we see the pituitaries underneath. So it really is this simple. There are no curveballs. I keep it simple when it comes to these things. I think it's fair that students don't get curveballs. Here I'm asking, identify the organ indicated by the black arrow, and we've talked about the pineal gland before. It's going to be the tiny one there. I don't think it shows up particularly well on this one, so I probably would accept a lot of answers on this. If it's something that I can agree with, you'll get the points. Again, different ways of phrasing it, pineal gland, whatever, as long as it somewhat makes sense. Here I'm asking again of a region of a gland. So I'm really looking that, yeah, you know, it's adrenal gland, and it's probably going to be the cortex of the adrenal gland. If you just write a cortex, I will still give you points. So again, you can write it in many different ways. These are not what you see on the screen, the only way to write them. Are you able to see them? They're not too tiny.
Yeah, I can see them.
Yes. I was like, oh, this is a really bad time for me to realize to ask for it. So I'm just really bad about zooming in. Here again, I'm asking organ indicated by the black arrow. So this would be our pituitary gland here. The hard part here is that now we're looking, it flips in a way that the posterior is here and anterior is here. So again, just take time a little bit to orientate yourself to make sure that you know which direction is where so you can make sense what we're seeing. The next question, identify the organ indicated by the black arrow. Well, let's see what we're seeing here. And of course, we're seeing thymus. So thyroid is more superior to thymus. You remember thymus disappears over age. So I would accept adult sizes. I think that that's a lot of detail. I would probably give double points for that. But it really doesn't matter to me as long as it makes sense what you're answering. Here again, I have a histological slide, and this one asks you to identify what organ is it from. This is going to be from pituitary gland, anterior pituitary in particular. And this is one of those that was covered in those videos. So that's where these come from. Next, I think we're getting to the blood chapter. So it's going to be blood cells. So I'm asking which cell is indicated by the black arrow. And of course, this is going to be our red blood cell. You can also answer as an erythrocyte. You can answer as RBC. I accept any and all of those. If you write all of them, you can get, I think, 3 points or 3 times the points for that. So really just answer what comes to you. Usually the first instinct is the best. But if you provide me more detail, I will provide you more points. I really have nothing to lose or gain in that sense. Here, again, I'm asking what cell would be indicated. And we remember these are going to be monocytes because of how the cell appears. And I think you have a very good textbook. You have a very good practice anatomy slides. And I provided you also some written descriptions of those. So to be honest, I would just make sure that I have those sitting by. You probably will be able to recognize them just from your memory. But in case you're like, oh crap, I don't remember which one this was, have them somewhere so you don't have to start now logging in and looking for textbooks and wandering off. But it does happen sometimes that students' internet, for example, crashes halfway through when they're doing something. If that were to happen, all you have to do is drop me a message on the Canvas and I'll just reset it. This week, because I'm doing exams in other schools as well, I'm pretty much glued to my computer screen. So as soon as a message comes through, I'm like, oh, they need to get something addressed. The next one that we have here, again, another white blood cell. This is going to be our basophil. Again, from the appearance of the cell, from what we've discussed, that's what it is going to be. That's how we go through those. The next one, I think it's another white blood cell type that I was asking, if I remember. Yes, neutrophil. We see these characteristics that are very characteristic to the neutrophil, multiple lobules of the nucleus, and so on and so on. For the sake of completeness, I know you probably have other things to do, but I'm just going to show the last one so we can go through all of them. Here we see a lymphocyte. You remember the nucleus takes all of the white blood cells surface area. That's very characteristic for that. And then I have here our eosinophil. Again, we see all those characteristics that we've discussed for eosinophil. What makes an eosinophil eosinophil? So that's really as tough as it gets. I think that the histology is usually the ones that students feel like, oh, that's the toughest one. But have notes available for you. If you are allowed to do that, why not to make most of it? Here we see the platelets. You remember they were the tiniest ones on those. There's a little bit amplified view there. So there's 2 different pictures, a composite that I've generated. All I'm looking is that you tell me that they're platelets. Then if you start writing more information, oh, they're cell fragments, they do this, they do that, I will give you points for those as well. But that's not an expectation. Like you really don't need to do any more than what I'm asking. I'm not asking you to go above and beyond. If you go above and beyond, I will, of course, reward it. Here we see megakaryocyte. I think the question was, what are we seeing? So what we're seeing here is a megakaryocyte. And I think that's all that I have there. The last thing that I'm really putting there is just I'm warning the students that please don't be shocked if your initial score isn't what you think it will be. And that's all there is on the practical. Did that clarify it at all, or maybe no?
Yes, that did. Yeah. That helped a lot. That was the one that I was most nervous for. So.
Oh, students seem to be really nervous about that because it is, I agree, it is kind of intimidating, and especially when you don't know what's happening. But I'm going to be honest, we've just gone through every single question that I'm going to ask on that. So now just have that handy, take screenshots, do whatever you need, and you'll be amazing. If you prefer, you can do it in a class. And if you do it in a class and you ask me, what is this? I will tell you the answer. But there's no requirement. As long as I get a student to show up once for me every week, I can say that, yes, they're actively participating. And to be honest, no one really cares until financial aid asks at some point that, oh, these students showing up to your classes. And I would reach out to a student if I was like, no, they're not. I would be emailing them week after week that I'm not seeing you and they're going to come after me. And so really, it's up to you. If you want to come tomorrow, I'm so happy to have you there. I'm going to be there. There's going to be some other students, but also don't feel that you have to. It's totally your choice. I think one student is coming in tomorrow to do the lab from the blood chapter because they missed that lab. So it's kind of like a catch-up day. If you miss something, I will be there to explain it. But again, you are very, very, very welcome, but don't feel that you have. That's all I'm saying. Is there anything else I could answer, anything that I can help with? I know that this was kind of all over the place.
No, I think that was my biggest question was the lab practical, so I feel pretty.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm super glad if that puts any of the nerves away from that. And please know that at the end of the semester in my class, I give the finals week. I don't give an exam. I give a project. You don't have to do it. The finals week project is extra grade. You can bring up your overall grade by 1 letter grade. So there really is so many chances that if you want that A, you definitely can get it on this class. And if you still come to me and say that I wanted to get an A and now I'm standing at the B, I will tell you something. Oh, write me an essay, and then you write it and I can bump up. So really, there are no curveballs. This is very straightforward, and I never surprise students with any tough questions.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I was really nervous about this class and everything.
Oh, and
So
I know that there's a lot of writing when you're doing them as a prereq to somewhere. Like, you really need to get those points. And the last thing I want is you to be stressed on this class. There's so much happening in the world that you can be stressed about. This is not one of those things. So I hope this helped. Like I said, I'm here. I'm happy to answer anything. If you have no questions, this is it. That's all I can offer. But if you have anything else, feel free. And I'm also happy to do it so that I can turn off the recording if you want to ask something that's especially about your grade.
Okay. No, I think I'm good.
Okay, you're good. Well, I hope you have a very good rest of the night. Thank you for joining. I have definitely you listed. I am going to be honest. I give extra credit just for showing up. And you're like okay. Already on top of that list, but don't tell anyone. But I really do give credit just for being active and taking part. So you're all set. I think I would be shocked if you're not going to do well. I can't promise you a grade, but I would be shocked. And if I'm shocked, I'm going to come to you and say, what are we going to do to get you okay. where you need to be? So do not stress. You're doing amazing, and I really do appreciate you being part of this class.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, have a good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye.
And that really concludes our recording for this session. So anyone who was nervous about the practical aspect of the class, well, here you have it. You have had a chance to look through those, and I hope you have a very good rest of the day. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am here to help you to succeed.